Get in the ring, Drifter, prove you're not just trash. The words cracked through the gym like a whip. Sweat, metal, and the hum of LED lights filled the air inside Iron Forge MMA Academy in Phoenix, Arizona. Dozens of phones hovered in the crowd, their red lights blinking, hungry for humiliation. Jalen Brooks stood barefoot on the edge of the mat, his old hoodie damp with desert dust, a pair of torn gloves pressed against his chest. Across from him, Coach Cole Maddox, 35, sculpted, cocky, and loud, grinned the way a man does when he knows the crowd is on his side. "What's the matter?" Cole barked. "Too good to touch gloves with a real fighter?" Jalen said nothing. He stepped forward quietly, sliding the gloves on, the leather cracked and flaking. The cage door clanged shut behind him. The smell of disinfectant mixed with adrenaline. "You got 10 seconds to make me believe you belong here," Cole sneered. Jalen looked up. Calm, eyes still. For a heartbeat, time froze, the world narrowing to two men and a circle of lights. Then Cole moved. A quick feint, a sloppy jab meant to sting pride more than flesh. But Jalen slipped to the side, head tilted just enough, his movement quiet, exact. The punch cut through air. Gasps rippled. Someone laughed nervously. The laughter died just as fast. Cole blinked, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. Jalen straightened slowly. "Didn't mean to embarrass you, Coach," he said, voice low, steady. Cole's grin hardened into a smirk. "Oh, you'll bleed for that." He came again, sharper, testing. Another miss. Another whisper of fabric. Jalen's breathing never changed. He'd done this before years ago, in places where the crowd wasn't laughing but betting. Where the lights were halogen bulbs strung over sandbags, not sleek LEDs. Inside, something long dormant stirred, but he pushed it back down. This wasn't his fight. Not yet. The room pulsed with energy, phones recording every breath. A chant began. "Teach him, Coach. Teach him." Cole's voice cut through. "Come on, soldier, you scared?" The word hit harder than any punch. Soldier. For a split second, Jalen wasn't in Phoenix anymore. He was in uniform, standing in the heat of another kind of cage, one made of wire and gunfire. A woman's voice echoed in memory. "Protect your chin. And your heart." He blinked. Pulled back to the present. Cole was circling. Shoulders rolling like a predator bored with the chase. "You even know how to fight, old man?" he taunted. "Or do you just clean up after the ones who can?" Jalen's silence made the words land heavier. The crowd loved Cole's swagger, the showmanship. The cruelty disguised as confidence. Every movement of his drew applause. Every stillness of Jalen made them uneasy. "If you believe dignity deserves respect, hit like and comment dignity first," the livestream announcer's voice called from behind the phones, and the absurdity of it all washed over Jalen like heat. He wasn't here for entertainment. He was here because someone with power decided to remind him of what he didn't have. Cole lunged again, aiming higher, faster. Maybe even meaning to hurt this time. Jalen ducked beneath it, pivoted softly, and the distance opened between them once more. Gasps. Murmurs. A slow dawning confusion among the spectators. Cole Maddox, former regional champ, couldn't touch a homeless man who mopped his floors. The humiliation was spreading across his face like a shadow. "Lucky," he spat. "Try it again." Jalen didn't move. He kept his stance, knees loose, hands low. The stillness unsettled Cole more than any counterpunch could have. The camera phones were now divided, some filming Cole, others zooming on the stranger's calm, unreadable expression. "You think this is a game?" Cole hissed, his voice cracking with something less than control. "This is my house." Jalen's voice, quiet but firm, finally broke the air. "Then you should know how to clean it." The crowd murmured, caught between laughter and guilt. Cole flushed red, rage boiling. He charged, shoulder down, aiming for Jalen's ribs. For a moment, Jalen thought of walking away, of letting the man crash into air and his own ego. But Cole's momentum was too fast, too wild. Jalen sidestepped instinct, not anger, and Cole stumbled, slamming into the cage wall. The metallic echo silenced the room. For half a breath, everyone froze. Jalen lowered his hands, stepping back, leaving space for Cole to recover. The cameras caught everything, the restraint, the poise. Cole saw it too, and that made it worse. "You think you're better than me?" he snarled, wiping blood from his lip. "No," Jalen said softly. "Just tired of being less." Something shifted. For the first time, Cole saw it, the discipline behind the quiet. The steel inside the humility. The man he'd mocked wasn't afraid. He was choosing not to fight. That choice scared him more than any punch. Cole spat again, eyes wild. Mask slipping. "You're done here." He stormed out of the cage, leaving the crowd in an awkward hush. The show was over. But no one clapped. Jalen pulled off the gloves, placing them gently on the mat. The noise of the gym returned, air conditioning hum, faint music, whispers. He looked around. Not at the phones but at the few faces that weren't sneering. Sarah near the reception desk. Her brow furrowed with worry. Rivera by the wall, arms crossed, eyes heavy with memory. Jalen nodded slightly to both. No words. He stepped out of the cage, every motion calm, deliberate. People moved aside as he passed, the way they do for someone they can't quite understand. Outside, the Arizona night wrapped around him. Dry and wide. He could still feel the eyes on his back. Still hear Cole's voice echoing like a bad song. "Get in the ring, Drifter." He exhaled, long and slow, watching the city's neon blur against the horizon. He wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, a job, an apology, or another locked door. But for the first time in months, maybe years, he didn't feel invisible. Under the buzzing streetlight, he pulled from his pocket a folded photo. Clara's smile, Naomi's eyes. "Still standing," he whispered. His reflection in the darkened gym window looked older, rougher, but whole. Inside, laughter had resumed, forced and brittle. But somewhere between the noise and the silence, something had shifted. The man they'd mocked had walked out untouched. And the man who'd mocked him, his story had just begun to crack. The bus station always smelled like dust and burnt coffee. Jalen Brooks sat on a metal bench that hummed faintly beneath the passing trains. It was past midnight, the kind of hour when the world forgets its noise. Phoenix shimmered under a blanket of desert heat even after dark. A soda machine flickered nearby, its light revealing the creases on Jalen's face, the gray strands tangled in his beard, and the scar beneath his right eye, a line drawn by a time he no longer spoke about. He unfolded the worn photograph from his pocket. Clara's smile looked younger than he remembered, her eyes bright with a faith he could no longer carry. Their daughter Naomi had her mother's dimples, frozen in that old picture, standing in front of the small house they'd lost years ago. The edges of the photo were soft from being opened too many times. He traced the outline of Clara's face with his thumb. "Still here," he murmured. The vending machine clunked somewhere behind him, breaking the quiet. He slipped the photo away, stood, and shouldered his backpack, half empty, half forgotten. The streets outside the terminal were quiet, except for the occasional buzz of a passing car or the distant bark of a dog. He walked toward the south side, to the only place he knew would still have a light on. Iron Forge. He'd left the gym hours earlier after the incident with Cole Maddox. He hadn't meant to humiliate the man. But pride had a way of finding its own stage. Jalen knew the clip would already be circling social media, sliced and twisted to fit someone else's story. The thought made his stomach tighten. Still, he needed the shower. He needed the warmth. The city's heat could kill you during the day, but the desert night froze like guilt. When he reached the gym, the front doors were locked, but he still had a back key. Sarah had given it to him months ago. "Use it when you need to," she'd said quietly, avoiding Cole's glare. He let himself in, flicking on a single hallway light. The hum of the old bulbs filled the silence. The ring stood in the center of the room, an empty monument under pale fluorescence. Jalen stared at it for a long moment. The smell of sweat and leather mixed with disinfectant. Every sound echoed the creak of his boots, the soft exhale of the air vents. He walked toward the janitor's closet, grabbed a mop, and began to clean. It was a habit, almost a prayer. When his mind was restless, movement helped. The mop slid across the mat in slow, steady arcs. "Keep your chin and your heart," he whispered under his breath, the words of Rivera echoing in memory. He could still see the old man's face, the way he'd said it like scripture. Rivera had been a fighter once too, back when respect was earned, not broadcast. He'd spotted Jalen a few months back, moving through the dark after hours, throwing combinations into the air for no one. Rivera had watched in silence before stepping forward. "You've done this before," he'd said. Jalen shrugged. "Used to. Army?" Rivera guessed. Jalen nodded. "Golden gloves, maybe?" Jalen hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Long time ago." Rivera had handed him a pair of hand wraps, worn soft from years of use. "These belonged to a fighter who never made the news but never quit either. Keep them. The world will hit you harder than any man ever could. You just remember, protect your chin. And your heart." Jalen had kept those wraps close ever since. Tonight, they were still in his hoodie pocket, warm from his skin. The sound of a door opening broke his rhythm. He turned. Sarah stood there, hair pulled back, still in her staff polo, fatigue written across her face. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Cole's furious." Jalen leaned on the mop handle. "He's got a right to be. He's already told management you assaulted him." Jalen laughed softly. A dry, humorless sound. "Then that's the story they'll tell." Sarah frowned. "You can't just accept that. People believe what fits their comfort," he said. "A homeless man throwing a punch at a coach, that's easy to swallow." She stepped closer. "But it's not true." He looked at her. "Truth doesn't pay the bills, Sarah." She sighed, glancing toward the security cameras. "I saved the footage," she said quietly. "All of it. The way he pushed you, the way he taunted you. It's on my drive." Jalen's gaze softened. "That's brave of you." "It's not bravery," she said. "It's conscience. And maybe a little guilt." Jalen tilted his head. "Guilt?" "I saw what was coming. I could have stopped him." "You couldn't," he said gently. "Men like Cole, people like that, they only learn when something stops them." Sarah crossed her arms. "He's not done with you. He's going to spin this like he's the victim. You need to protect yourself." Jalen's eyes dropped to the floor. "I've been protecting myself my whole life." She studied him a moment longer. "You're not alone, you know." He didn't answer. She sighed again, leaving him to the silence. When the door clicked shut, he exhaled slowly. The loneliness settled around him like an old coat. He rinsed the mop, set it aside, then walked to the heavy bag in the corner. It still bore the dents of years of practice. He slipped on his gloves and began to move slow, rhythmic. Jab. Cross. Step back. He wasn't fighting anger, he was fighting memory. The rhythmic thuds filled the empty room. Each strike was a heartbeat. Each pause a breath between worlds. He remembered Clara again, sitting in the front row of that last amateur match, cheering with Naomi on her lap. That night, he'd promised it was just the beginning. He hadn't known how fast everything could end. He closed his eyes, hearing her voice. "You fight with your heart, Jay, not your fists." The bag swayed, creaked, stilled. He leaned against it, forehead pressed to the canvas, breathing heavy. When he looked up, the mirror across the wall reflected a stranger, a man older than his years, covered in the dust of bad luck and harder choices. But under the exhaustion, there was something solid, unbroken. A man who still stood. Outside, the first light of dawn crawled over the horizon. He gathered his things, shut off the lights, and stepped into the cool air. The city was waking slowly. Across the street, Rivera sat in his old pickup truck, sipping coffee from a paper cup. He rolled down the window as Jalen passed. "You hit him clean," Rivera said quietly. "Didn't mean to," Jalen replied. "I know. That's why it mattered." Rivera reached into his jacket and handed Jalen another item, a folded paper bag with a sandwich inside. "Eat something. Pride doesn't fill a stomach." Jalen managed a faint smile. "You watching over me now, old man?" Rivera's eyes softened. "Someone has to. You remind me of every fighter who walked out before they were done." "I'm done," Jalen said. "No," Rivera shook his head. "You're just between rounds." Jalen stared at the ground, unsure how to answer. The air smelled faintly of rain, though the sky was still clear. "You think it'll rain?" he asked absently. "Phoenix always looks like it might," Rivera said, starting his truck. "But it takes a lot to make it cry." As the engine faded into the distance, Jalen stood on the sidewalk, chewing slowly on the sandwich, the taste plain but grounding. He looked back at the gym's dark windows, his reflection faint in the glass. Somewhere inside, Cole Maddox was probably rehearsing his story, wrapping himself in pride and excuses. But the truth, like dust in the desert, had a way of clinging no matter how hard you tried to sweep it away. The sun climbed higher, painting the city in copper light. Jalen turned toward the bus stop again, feeling the day's heat beginning to rise. But for the first time in years, he didn't shrink from it. He squared his shoulders, his shadow stretching long behind him, and walked toward whatever waited beyond the next corner. By Monday morning, the video had gone viral. Not the whole story. Not the truth, just a 30-second clip of Cole Maddox hitting the mat and a headline that screamed, "Homeless man attacks MMA coach during charity class." The algorithm didn't care about context, it only wanted outrage. Jalen Brooks sat in the back booth of a rundown diner on 7th Avenue, staring at the small TV above the counter. His face flickered across the screen, blurred but recognizable. The news anchor's voice was smooth and practiced. Police are investigating an altercation at Iron Forge MMA Academy. Witnesses say a transient man assaulted Coach Cole Maddox during a training demonstration. Jalen stirred his coffee, though he hadn't added sugar. Across from him, Rivera sipped his black and set the mug down with a sigh. "They turned it into a circus," the old coach muttered. "They always do," Jalen said. "They sell fear. People click on fear." Rivera's eyes studied him. "You gonna let them bury you with it?" "I've been buried before," Jalen replied, voice calm but heavy. The bell above the door jingled as Sarah stepped in, still in her gray Iron Forge sweatshirt, hair tied up, dark circles under her eyes. She slid into the booth beside Rivera, placing a flash drive on the table. "It's all here," she said softly. "The whole thing. Every second the cameras caught." Jalen glanced at it, then back at her. "That'll just make things worse." "No," Sarah said firmly. "It'll make things right." "Not for them," Jalen said. "Cole's the face of the gym, the brand. People don't care about the truth if the lie feels cleaner." Rivera leaned forward. "You underestimate what people can see when you put the whole picture in front of them. Or overestimate it," Jalen said. The waitress came by, poured more coffee, called Rivera hone, the way old waitresses do. The normalcy of it all, the clinking dishes, the smell of bacon felt surreal against the noise outside their world. "He's already doing interviews," Sarah said, her voice tense. "Talking about how you snapped. How he tried to help you and you lost control. Management's backing him up." "Of course they are," Rivera muttered. "They built that boy like a product. They're planning a press conference tomorrow," Sarah continued. "Cole's promising to forgive you publicly, if you apologize." Jalen gave a slow, bitter smile. "Forgive me? He wants a show," Rivera said. "You give him silence, he gets bored. Or he gets louder," Sarah countered. "He's good at loud." Jalen sat back, eyes unfocused, the rhythm of passing cars outside matching the dull pulse in his head. "I don't want a show," he said finally. "I just want peace." "Peace doesn't come to people like us," Rivera said. "You fight for it, or they take it from you." The flash drive glinted in the sunlight streaming through the blinds. Jalen stared at it, his reflection warped across the plastic. He could end this. Maybe. Or make it worse. Either way, he knew he couldn't run forever. "Keep it safe," he said quietly. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "You know," Rivera added, "when I was your age, I thought silence was noble. Turns out, silence is just what the powerful pray for." The words lingered after he left. That night, Sarah walked back into the gym. Cole was there with the investors, laughing too loud, pretending the world hadn't seen him fall. "Sarah," he said smoothly when he spotted her. "You here to make things right?" "Depends what right means to you," she said. Cole's smile thinned. "It means we keep our jobs. It means we don't let a washed-up bum ruin our reputation." "You mean the man you humiliated?" she asked. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I mean the man who hit me in front of 40 witnesses. Don't confuse sympathy with loyalty." She stared at him, realizing there was nothing beneath his charm but emptiness. "You should watch that footage again," she said, turning to leave. Maybe you'll see who really threw the first punch. Cole's smirk cracked. Be careful, Sarah. People who stick their necks out usually lose their heads. She left without answering. The next morning, the Iron Forge logo gleamed on local TV again. Cole sat in a pressed suit beside the investor. Rehearsed humility dripping from every word. I want people to know I forgive him, he said. The man clearly needs help. We're arranging to donate to a veterans shelter in his name. The reporters ate it up. A hero for giving his attacker perfect PR. Jalen watched from the corner of a laundromat, the volume low but the meaning clear. Rivera stood beside him, arms folded. He's not even creative, the old man said. Same playbook every bully uses. Doesn't matter, Jalen said quietly. People will believe him. I look like the part. Then change the script, Rivera said. Sarah's ready. Tyler's with her. Jalen blinked. Tyler? Yeah. Kid finally saw through the act. He's got half the gym talking. Jalen stared at the washing machine spinning, thinking of the rhythm of punches against a heavy bag, the sound of fists turning into echoes. I never wanted to be anyone's symbol, he murmured. Too late, Rivera said. They made you one. Later that day, Jalen walked to the community shelter where he'd been sleeping. The director, a gray-haired woman named Mrs. Calhoun, met him at the door. Heard about that mess, she said gently. You keeping your chin up? He smiled faintly. Trying to. My brother was Army, she said. You men carry too much alone. Let the truth do some lifting. Her words followed him out the door. That evening, Sarah sent a text. We're posting the full video at midnight. Are you sure? Jalen stared at the message for a long moment before replying. Do what you need to. When the clock hit 12, the video went live. The uncut footage showed Cole shoving him, taunting, the cruel words, the deliberate humiliation. It showed Jalen's patience, his restraint. The comments exploded. Some still called him a thug, others saw the truth. Hashtags began to shift. Number Dignity First appeared on screens across Arizona. Tyler shared it with a caption. That's not rage. That's control. The next morning, reporters waited outside Iron Forge. Cole arrived in sunglasses, jaw tight. No comment, he barked, but the damage was spreading like wildfire. The investors went silent. Sponsors pulled back. Jalen didn't watch any of it. He sat on a park bench under a mesquite tree, the desert wind brushing his face. The city buzzed around him, cars, horns, life moving on. Rivera found him there, holding 2 coffees. You did it, the old man said, handing him one. No, Jalen said. The truth did. Same difference, Rivera replied. They sat in silence, watching the sun slide down behind the skyline. What now? Rivera asked. They'll come after you, Jalen said. I'm too old to care. And me? You start over, Rivera said. You teach again. This time, on your terms. Jalen let the words sink in. For the first time in years, he imagined a place that wasn't survival but purpose, a gym where no one was mocked for being less. A place where strength didn't mean cruelty. The light dimmed, the desert cooling with evening. Rivera stood, stretching. You know what I like about the truth? He said. It doesn't need to shout. It just waits. Jalen nodded, eyes following the last streak of sun disappearing behind the mountains. Somewhere out there, Cole Maddox was scrambling, spinning, trying to rewrite what the world had seen. But some stories, once told, can't be untold. Jalen finished his coffee, stood, and walked toward the lights of the city. The sound of the crowd in his memory fading into something quieter. Something almost like peace. By the time Thursday came, the story had consumed Phoenix. Local talk shows debated it like a sport. Morning DJs joked about the knockout heard round the valley, and the Iron Forge Academy found itself at the center of a storm it couldn't spin away. Cole Maddox's name, once a magnet for sponsors and ego, now drew more jeers than praise. Yet inside the gym, he stood beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, pacing like a caged wolf. His reflection glared back from the mirror, jaw clenched, a bruise yellowing beneath the surface of his cheek. The gym felt smaller now. Every whisper carried weight. Every sound of gloves hitting bags reminded him of what the world had seen. His arrogance brought to its knees by a man he'd called trash. His assistant, A nervous kid named Brian lingered by the door. "Press wants a statement, coach," he muttered. "They're saying the sponsors are pulling out. They'll come back." Cole snapped. "They always do. People love a comeback story." He stared at himself, adjusting the collar of his Iron Forge shirt. "I just need to control the narrative again." "Sir, the uncut footage." "I don't care about the damn footage," Cole roared, his voice bouncing off the steel walls. "That old man blindsided me. I'm not gonna let some washed-up janitor take everything I built." He caught his breath, ran a hand through his hair, and lowered his voice. "We'll host an exhibition," he said slowly. "Make it a charity rematch. Show the cameras I'm the bigger man." Brian hesitated. "You think he'll show up?" "He will," Cole said, a cruel smile curving his lips. "They always do. Pride's a leash." Across town, Jalen Brooks was sweeping the back lot of the community center when Rivera drove up in his old truck. Dust curling behind him. The old coach got out with the newspaper in his hand. "You seen this?" he asked, tossing it onto the bench. The headline read, "Maddox challenges Brooks to rematch for charity. No bad blood." Jalen studied it for a long moment, then sighed. "He wants his pride back," he said quietly. "He wants an audience," Rivera corrected. "Don't give him one. If I stay quiet, he wins the story again. If you show up, you play his game." Jalen leaned on his broom handle, eyes narrowing. "Sometimes you need to step back into the ring not to fight him, but to end it." Rivera shook his head. "He's dangerous. Jalen. Cornered men don't fight clean." "Neither do liars," Jalen said. That evening, Sarah arrived with a worried look. "He's calling it the redemption match," she said, setting her phone on the counter. "He's selling tickets. All proceeds to veterans' charities. You're the villain of his redemption arc." Jalen's lips tightened. "I never asked to be in his story." "You are, whether you want it or not," she said. "But you can decide how it ends." Outside, the desert sun fell heavy, painting the city in amber and rust. The air tasted of dust and gasoline. Jalen walked home slowly, thinking of Clara, of the promises he'd broken to stay invisible. Maybe invisibility wasn't peace after all. Maybe it was surrender. 2 days later, Iron Forge was packed again. News vans lined the street, banners hung on the glass doors. The sign above the cage read, "Fight for honor, Cole Maddox fistus Jalen Brooks." The irony stung like salt. Jalen arrived quietly. No entourage. No cameras in tow. He wore Rivera's old wraps under borrowed gloves. Rivera himself stood by the door, arms crossed, disapproving but resigned. "You sure about this?" the old man asked. "I'm sure I'm done running." Cole was already inside the cage, pacing, soaking up the flash of cameras. His white hoodie gleamed under the lights. When he saw Jalen step in, his grin widened. "Didn't think you'd have the guts," he called out. Jalen said nothing. He bowed slightly, the gesture old-fashioned, a nod to respect Cole would never return. "Keep it civil," the event host said nervously. "This is for charity." Cole laughed. "Charity begins at home." The bell rang. Cole lunged forward with wild energy, his form tight but desperate. The crowd roared. Jalen moved slow, measured, every motion defensive. He wasn't here to win. He was here to survive the truth. Cole feinted left, swung hard right. The blow grazed Jalen's cheek, but Jalen didn't flinch. He saw the fear under Cole's rage, the panic of a man losing his mask. "Come on," Cole shouted. "Hit me." "You already hit yourself," Jalen said quietly. The crowd didn't catch the words, but Rivera did, and a sad smile crossed his face. Cole attacked again, faster, more reckless. Jalen dodged each strike, feeling the rhythm, the weight of the noise pressing in. Phones were recording. Every second mattered. Then, in one sharp motion, Cole stumbled. He'd overextended. His foot slipped on sweat. Jalen reached out instinctively, catching him by the arm before he could fall again. For a heartbeat, the crowd froze. The image was unmistakable, the man called the attacker, now helping his enemy stand. Cole jerked away, red-faced, humiliated. "Don't you dare pity me," he barked. "This isn't pity," Jalen said. "It's mercy." The words hit harder than any punch. Cole swung again, blind with fury. Jalen stepped back, letting him miss, and the coach's own momentum sent him crashing into the ropes. The bell clanged. The referee jumped in, calling the match. The crowd erupted in confusion, half cheering, half murmuring. Cole staggered upright, his breath ragged. Camera zoomed in. Sweat dripped down his face, mixed with the sharp edge of shame. Jalen raised his gloves, not in victory, but in acknowledgement. He turned, starting toward the exit. Behind him, Cole's voice cracked through the air. "You think this makes you a hero?" Jalen didn't stop walking. "No," he said. "Just a man who stopped letting villains write the story." Outside, the night was cooler than expected. Reporters flooded toward him, microphones thrust forward, questions overlapping. "Jalen, are you pressing charges? Was the fight staged? What do you say to those who think you humiliated him again?" He kept walking, Rivera and Sarah flanking him like quiet sentinels. "The truth humiliated him," Rivera muttered under his breath. "You just stood there long enough for everyone to see it." Later, after the crowd had dispersed, Cole sat alone in the locker room. The cameras were gone, the lights dimmed. His reflection in the mirror was pale, his eyes hollow. He picked up his phone, scrolling through headlines. Maddox meltdown, fighter snaps at rematch. Brooks shows grace under fire. The sound of his own breath filled the silence. He hurled the phone against the wall, shattering it into silence. Jalen, meanwhile, stood on the roof of a nearby parking garage, looking down at the city lights flickering like restless souls. He could still feel the pulse of the crowd, the rush of adrenaline fading into emptiness. Rivera approached, holding 2 bottles of water. "You did it," he said quietly. "No," Jalen answered. "He did it to himself." Rivera handed him a bottle. "Maybe. But you gave people something they haven't seen in a long time, grace under fire." Jalen watched the lights shimmer across the skyline. "Grace doesn't trend," he said softly. Rivera chuckled. "Maybe not. But it lasts longer than fame." Below, the last news van drove away, leaving the night still. The city exhaled. Jalen took a long drink, the cool water cutting through the dryness of his throat. "It's over," Rivera said. "For him, maybe," Jalen murmured. "For me, it's just beginning." In the distance, the Iron Forge sign flickered, one letter sputtering before going dark. 2 days after the rematch, Phoenix woke up divided. Some saw Jalen Brooks as a symbol of quiet strength, others as a man who'd humiliated a fallen hero twice. The truth, like always, sat somewhere in the silence between those voices. Jalen stayed out of sight, moving through the edges of the city, where the news didn't matter and the air still smelled like dust and gasoline. But even there, the whispers reached him, his name murmured over diner counters, printed across newspapers, whispered in church halls. Rivera found him outside the community shelter, helping unload food donations. "You been hiding or healing?" the old man asked, setting a box down. "Little of both," Jalen said. "Hard to tell the difference sometimes." Rivera handed him a folded piece of paper, a letter from the Iron Forge corporate office. Jalen didn't open it. "They're offering you money," Rivera said. "Settlement to make the mess go away." "They think I want their money," Jalen said, almost laughing. "What do you want?" Rivera asked. Jalen wiped his hands on his jeans. "I want peace. I want to walk into a room and not see fear in people's eyes." Rivera nodded slowly. "You can't buy that, but you can build it." Later that evening, Sarah met them both at a small cafe downtown. Her eyes were tired, her phone buzzing with notifications she ignored. "Cole's been fired," she said softly. "Morrison the investor cut him loose after sponsors pulled out. They're rebranding the gym." Jalen didn't react. "What about him?" "He's disappeared," Sarah said. "Some say he left town. Others say he's trying to start over in Nevada." "Let him," Jalen said. "He's got his fight, I've got mine." "And what's yours?" she asked. He looked out the window, where the reflection of streetlights glimmered over the desert haze. "I'm not sure yet. But maybe it's time to teach what I never stopped learning." Rivera leaned back, a slow grin spreading across his face. "You thinking what I think you're thinking? A place that isn't about winning or humiliation," Jalen said. "Just strength, discipline, self-respect. For people like me, for the ones who get written off before they even start." Sarah smiled faintly. "You'd need space, equipment, Permits. I've got time, Jalen said. And a broom. Rivera chuckled. You've also got me. And a few kids who've been asking about you. Tyler, especially. He wants to learn from the man who beat his coach without throwing a single real punch. That night, Jalen couldn't sleep. He sat by the small window of his shelter room, watching the city hum. The past weeks had stripped something away from him, but what was left felt cleaner, truer. He thought of Clara again, her voice like a memory carried by the wind. Fight with your heart, Jay. He whispered to the dark, maybe now I know how. The next morning, he and Rivera met with the city's community board. It wasn't glamorous paperwork, funding applications, long hours of waiting, but it was real. Sarah joined them, bringing the Iron Forge incident footage as part of their proposal. We're not just building a gym, she told the board members. We're building a refuge. One of the board members, a stern woman with silver hair, folded her hands. Why should the city invest in another gym? Jalen looked her in the eye. Because this one won't be about trophies. It'll be about second chances. The room fell quiet. The woman nodded slowly. We'll review it, she said. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. That was enough. Over the next few weeks, word spread. Veterans dropped by, curious. Teenagers wandered in after school. Rivera brought old mats from his storage shed. Sarah organized local donors. Tyler arrived one afternoon, holding a crate of gloves. They're not new, he said shyly. But they're clean. That's all they need to be. Jalen replied, clapping the boy's shoulder. They worked until sunset, transforming an abandoned warehouse into something that resembled hope. The first night it opened, no cameras came. No reporters. Just a handful of people, veterans, single parents, kids from the neighborhood. Jalen stood at the center of the mat, his voice steady. Strength isn't about how hard you can hit, he said. It's about how much you can carry without breaking the people around you. The crowd listened, silent, the weight of his words landing where fists never could. Rivera watched from the back, eyes glistening under the flicker of the overhead lights. You did it, he whispered. No, Jalen said, smiling faintly. We did. That night, when the doors closed and the mats were rolled up, he lingered. He picked up a stray glove, placed it on the rack, and turned off the lights. Outside, the air was cool. The desert stars spread wide and endless. As he locked the door, he saw a figure standing by the corner. Cole Maddox. The man looked smaller, thinner, wearing a hoodie that didn't fit right. His eyes carried exhaustion rather than pride. You found me, Jalen said quietly. Cole shrugged. Wasn't hard. Not many places take in lost causes. Jalen studied him for a long moment. You looking for another fight? No, Cole said. I came to say something. Go ahead. Cole's voice cracked. You didn't deserve what I did to you. Any of it. The apology hung there, fragile but real. I lost everything trying to look strong, he continued. Turns out, I didn't even know what strength was. Jalen didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, strength is getting up after you see who you really are. Cole nodded slowly. Guess I'm still on the floor. Then stand, Jalen said simply. Cole hesitated, then extended a hand. Jalen looked at it, then took it. No cameras. No audience. Just two men in the quiet of an empty street. You take care of yourself, Jalen said finally. And if you ever open another gym. Yeah? Cole asked. Remember what we built here, Jalen said. Cole nodded and walked into the night, his shadow shrinking under the streetlights until it disappeared. Jalen stood there a while, feeling the stillness settle. For the first time, he realized the story wasn't about a knockout or a rematch. It was about endurance, the kind that doesn't win medals but changes hearts. When he turned back toward the door, Rivera was waiting, leaning against his truck. You good? The old man asked. Better than good, Jalen said. I think I finally stopped fighting. Rivera smiled. Funny thing about peace, it hits harder than any punch. They drove off together, the desert stretching out before them, vast and golden. The gym sign behind them flickered faintly. Second Chance Academy. And for once, the light stayed on. The morning sun spilled through the high windows of the new gym, cutting golden stripes across the mats. The sign outside still looked hand-painted, but it shone with pride Second Chance Academy. The smell of rubber and fresh paint lingered, mixed with coffee brewing in a corner. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Jalen Brooks stood near the entrance, tightening the straps on a young veteran's gloves. "Keep your elbows in," he said gently. "You're not fighting the world, just finding your rhythm." The man nodded, nervous but eager. Around them, the sound of pads hitting gloves filled the air, steady, calm, purposeful. Rivera was running drills with 3 teenagers, barking in his old Marine tone, though his eyes softened every time one of them got it right. Sarah sat at a desk by the wall, sorting papers and donation forms. The gym wasn't just alive, it was breathing. Later that morning, a small news crew arrived. Not the flashy type that chased scandal, but a local community station. The reporter, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, smiled as she set up her mic. "Mr. Brooks, people are calling this place a miracle. What made you decide to start again?" Jalen looked around the gym before answering. "I didn't start again," he said. "I just stopped running from what I was supposed to do." She nodded, jotting notes. "And what's that?" "Teach people to stand," he said simply. "Even when life knocks them down." The segment aired that evening. It didn't go viral, and it didn't need to. But the next morning, 3 new students showed up: a young woman who'd survived an abusive relationship, an older man recovering from addiction, and a boy who'd been bullied at school. Jalen welcomed them each with the same calm smile, the one that said, "You belong here." The weeks rolled by. The city heat softened into autumn, and the once empty warehouse began to hum with life. Veterans came to train, teenagers found discipline, people who had nothing found a place where they mattered. The sound of laughter started replacing the echoes of fists. One afternoon, as the sun lowered behind the mountains, Naomi arrived. Jalen's heart stuttered when he saw her step through the door, taller now, her hair in braids. The same soft eyes as her mother. She hesitated, then smiled. "Mom said you'd never stop fighting," she said quietly. "Guess she was right." Jalen chuckled, wiping his hands on a towel. "Fighting's easier when you know what you're fighting for." Naomi looked around the gym. "This place is different." "It's home," he said. "For me, and maybe for you too." She grinned. "Maybe I'll train." "You can try," he teased. "But I don't go easy on family." They laughed, the sound warm and real. Rivera watched from across the room, eyes glinting with pride. "You did good, soldier," he murmured to himself. That night, the gym closed late. Everyone else had gone home except Jalen and Rivera. The 2 men sat on the edge of the ring, sharing a thermos of black coffee. The lights buzzed faintly above them. "You ever think about how strange it is?" Rivera asked. "You lose everything, then find something better in the ruins." Jalen nodded. "Sometimes I think that's the only way we learn what matters." Rivera smiled. "You know, I used to think justice meant punishment. Now I think it just means peace." "Peace doesn't come easy," Jalen said. "Nothing worth keeping does," Rivera replied. Silence settled between them, comfortable and earned. Across the gym, the old hand wraps Rivera's gift hung on the wall inside a simple frame. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "Protect your chin, and your heart." Outside, the night hummed softly. Streetlights flickered against the cracked pavement. Jalen walked to the window and looked out at the city. The same city that had once spat him out now seemed to breathe with him. He could see the diner where he'd once hidden, the bus stop where he'd slept, the old Iron Forge sign faded in the distance. It no longer hurt to look. Sarah joined him, handing over a piece of mail. "You've been invited to speak at the Veterans Forum next month," she said. "They want to hear your story." He laughed softly. "I don't think my story's that special." "It's not about being special," she said. "It's about being true." He opened the envelope, read the letter, then folded it carefully. "Maybe it's time to tell it," he said. The next day came quietly, like most good things do. The sun rose, the gym filled with the rhythm of gloves again. Tyler was teaching a small group of kids now, his voice confident, his stance steady. "Elbows in," he echoed Jalen's old line. "You're not fighting to hurt. You're fighting to stay standing." Rivera clapped once, proud. Jalen watched from the corner, arms crossed, heart full. Later, Naomi brought in an old photo of Clara, the one Jalen used to carry everywhere. They hung it beside the hand wraps. Under it, she wrote a small quote. "Grace under fire." It became the gym's motto. That evening, when the students left and the lights dimmed, Jalen sat alone for a while. He thought about the path that had brought him here, the humiliation, the anger, the loss, the long nights cleaning floors just to stay warm. None of it felt wasted anymore. He realized something deep and simple. The ring wasn't a place of violence. It was a mirror. It showed people who they truly were when the noise fell away. He smiled, whispering to the empty room. Still standing. Outside, the desert wind carried the faint sound of laughter from a nearby diner, the smell of rain teasing the air. The city had changed, or maybe he had. Somewhere out there, Cole Maddox was rebuilding too. Jalen hoped so. Not for redemption, but for peace. Because peace, he knew now, wasn't about erasing the past, it was about learning to live beside it. As he locked up the gym for the night, Rivera's old pickup rumbled in the distance. The old man waved once, then drove off into the dark. Jalen lingered under the glow of the sign before turning away. The letters shone steady, unbroken. Second Chance Academy. He looked up at the sky, stars faint behind the haze, and whispered a quiet prayer, not for victory, not for forgiveness, but for endurance. Justice, he realized, didn't always roar. Sometimes, it lived in the quiet hands of those who refused to strike twice. The city slept on, unaware that a man who'd once been forgotten had built something stronger than fame. A place where broken people came not to fight, but to stand tall again. And in that silence, beneath the slow rhythm of his own heartbeat, Jalen Brooks finally felt at peace.